Hey, everybody. I'm so excited to bring you my heartfelt and insightful interview with David. He is an accomplished businessman that just wanted to shed the old patterns and feelings that were dragging him down and getting in his way. He was able to do that quickly and easily, and here's his story. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Next Level Healing and Transformational Tuesdays. I'm joined by David today. I'm so excited to see you, David.
Me too.
You know, we've known each other almost a year now.
Oh, wow. Gosh, that went quick.
Amazing. I feel like I blink and a week goes by.
Yeah. Gosh.
So I love working with accomplished people, and I love working with men for two different reasons. A lot of times men don't like to do any kind of therapy because it's long and it's boring and it takes, it's just a lot of them feel like it's a waste of time. But men like results. And so do highly accomplished people such as yourself. Can you share with us what was life like before we started working together? What was the reason you wanted to work together, and how did things shift and change for you?
Sure. Life before there were, I don't have much to complain about, but, there were some things that just were always showing up in patterns and things that stuck. And, I never really understood why. I never understood why I can't fix this or why I keep having this reaction when, if I'm conscious and about it or reflect on it afterwards, I wouldn't want to be that person or that way.
And what did it feel like to have those challenges that just you couldn't get to with your conscious mind for decades?
Yeah, it felt like, there wasn't any way to really, I'm not a big therapy person. I'll go. I've done it and everything, and it's fine. I generally go, for family members and stuff like that. And it's always great, to have that feeling when you're in there, but it never ever felt like there was like a path, and it was a lot of repetitive stuff. You go back in the same thing, 5 years later, you're still talking about it. Um, and for me, it just, it felt like, how do I, I'm always like I want to solve a problem, when I get through, like you talked about, man, we want to solve things, we want to fix it. And it was like, the only way I could think about it was like, I just had to like, chip through it one at a time, or I had to do better in my meditation, or I had to do something different. And, it just, there are good days and bad days. Again, I didn't have much really to complain about. I'm very, very fortunate, very grateful, but just never felt like I could get out of some of those patterns or even understand where they came from.
And
And
and how quickly did you realize that this was different and this was making a difference?
yeah, I was just gonna say, from literally the very first session that we had, I don't know if you remember, I remember very well. It was, very, very emotional for me, and just stuff that I had, like, that had been imprinted on me, whether it was from, a young age, or even, it's really all these sort of like, I view it as like whatever the trauma is, and it can be small when you're small, it can be bigger when you're bigger, but like whatever it is, it imprints on you. And if you don't recognize that imprint, then it's very hard to kind of walk around it and see it from the other side. And, doing the work with you was just, it was like you could see it. You could see exactly what you were doing, where it came from, and why you felt those feelings. And to be able to, you know, interact with that version of yourself in being hypnotized, and be able to interact with that version of yourself, whether you were 5 or 18 or whatever, and, forgive that person or just love that person and understand it. It just takes it to a whole it and then it's not just for yourself, but then it just creates this compassion for everyone. You just see it, that everybody experiences that at some point in time, it's just life. It's part of it. It's part of the experience. And if you don't, if you can't get out of that, I see so many people stuck in that, you know, friends I've had for, 40, 50 years, family members, things like that, where, it becomes so identifiable to you once you've seen yourself do it. Once you've seen what you do to yourself, now you can see what everybody else is doing to themselves. And it's just it's a whole new light, and I'll say one other thing. It doesn't stop at working with you. It doesn't stop then. I was actually doing a meditation with some breath work that I was doing. And part of it was asking, when did you first feel this? It was so I was already in a theta state or whatever in the breath work. And it was the wildest thing. Like I was back when I was like 5 or 6 years old. It was something that we hadn't even identified. And I've always been different than most people in my family, particularly my dad's side of the family. I'm just, I'm not the same cut of the same cloth of them. They're very literal and, logical and kind of old fashioned and stuff like that. And I was always very, very different. And my dad, my aunt, my grandpa, his mom and dad, they were very, I felt, judged by that quite a bit. And I had during that breath work where I just, I had this realization that where I got some of this from was that I always was sort of, people didn't like that I was different, or I didn't think that they liked that I was different when I was that age and throughout my life. And, after I identified that, like I literally was surrounded by my dad, by my aunt, by my grandmother and grandfather. And it was just this feeling that, total unconditional love, like it's okay that you're different, and it was like, again, it was just that being able to go there and recognize that that's part of what the work is all about. And it's, there's always layers.
Hey guys, studies are showing that 68% of people that watch podcasts regularly don't click the subscribe button. Do me a huge favor. If you like this content, click subscribe so other people know where to go for the cool stuff. Thank you. I love that. So it sounds like you were able to see that we all have these universal struggles, and
Yeah.
that gives us a lot more compassion for other people and what they're going through. And also that it gave you a whole new uh, set of tools to use the tools that you were already using, but just at a deeper level.
Yeah. That couldn't say it better
Cool.
myself. Yeah. That's exactly how it.
And how did people around you in your life react to your shift?
Yeah. It was funny. My wife, literally 2 or 3 times after we worked together, she's like, "Oh, this is the new Dave. This is the new Dave. Now you're, we always make a joke when one of us is a little more conscious than the other. We call each other Gandhi, because we're
I love that.
recognizing that, somebody's having one of those moments or having one of those experiences where they're frustrated, but, it's really, they gotta look inside and see why that frustration's there, because, the exterior thing just is, you're wanting to change it, because of whatever reason you're bringing to that moment. So yeah, it's been fun. My kids definitely recognize it as well. That, there's a different, and then, trying to impart that on a teenager is, it's a best efforts type of event. Because sometimes when they're sitting there and they're, if they're hot in the moment, it doesn't work so well. But after that moment has gone by, to basically be able to sit there. And I've actually had some really amazing conversations with one of my daughters. So I have two teenage boys, and I have two daughters in their 20s. And my youngest daughter and we just had, just one of the most, loving, touching conversations for me, just about this process and about going through it. And, she even recognized that that was, you know, something that she's noticed different in me, over the last, bit of time here.
That's lovely. How did they like the new David?
I think everybody likes the new David. I think they like the other one, but I think they like the new David. It doesn't like mean you're a completely, and I certainly have my moments, but it's just like that again, it's all about, and Dr. Joe talks about, it's that period that it lasts if you're having a rough moment, and the ability to recognize it and then shift and engage in behavior that you want, be the person you want to be, not something because some 5-year-old's sad or got had a traumatic experience that you're still living. Yeah.
That's great. So, and how would you just encapsulate the best things that you got out of the process?
So for me, again, it's just like it feels like an evolution from, I've been doing the meditation work for almost 5 years now, and that has been a major, that's there was a new Dave part one there as well. Um, and then it's just been an evolution, and it makes all of that stuff better and more powerful. And just me personally being able to relate so much more, I mean, things that, used to bother me, I can see it the second it comes, and I can identify why that little nagging thing might be there, but it's a tiny little thing, and I can look at it, and sometimes I know it's there before it even comes up, and I just, I kind of smile at it. I have a friend that I've taught a little trick, like I literally have her make like I send her a picture of a hand puppet whenever she's kind of losing it. And I'm like, look at the hand puppet and have the hand puppet say what you just said to yourself or what you just said to me, and kind of give it this separation from the big feeling that is sort of overwhelming you at the moment. So it's just a lot more consciousness, and
That's
yeah,
great. And
it's
how has that elevated awareness and consciousness and willing to let go of things that don't serve you changed in your work?
Yeah, so I mean, in my work, I work with a lot of different parts of my organization. I work with a lot of different parts of the industry. And, and some of it is, I've been doing it for a long time. I have less time in it than I've put in it in the past. And so, I really there's just no room for bullshit for me, at this point in time. Like, if we're working on, if it be a commercial transaction or resolving something from a commercial transaction, for me, it's just about, being completely transparent, because I don't want to do something that, at the end of the day isn't consistent with who I am. And I just don't carry that energy into the meeting. So it's been really interesting. There's several people in my industry that have recognized it and asked me. They're getting ready to go to their first Dr. Joe retreat, and things like that, and just starting to become more and breath work and things like that. And I hope it's just something that's bigger than obviously what I'm talking about, but I feel like it's just it's a way to bring just a higher level of consciousness to a work environment, which makes it so much more enjoyable to do.
Beautiful. So if you were to go back in time to a year ago before we started working together and your experience of work then versus now, how would you compare the two?
Yeah, I'm a lot less worried about, like, maybe competition. I don't know if it's the right word, but just, not worry. If somebody's got an axe to grind or a thing that they want to get out, it's like, okay, I'm not gonna turn away from it or stop it. It's like it's that person's journey. It's that person's thing. Let them have it. Let them get it out. But then let's deal with it in a way that's far more um, productive for them and me. I don't have this thing where I'm angry at somebody, or I disagree. I mean, I'll disagree with them, but it's not to be who's right or who's wrong or who gets there. It's like, well, you have a valid opinion. I don't know where it came from, but you have a valid opinion. But, you know, it's not it's not the universe of ideas. it's a limited viewpoint that you have. Like, we had talked about NLP a little bit. Like the map is not the territory. It's like everybody comes with their map and their thoughts on it, but I know that I do not know the full territory, so a lot more willing to listen to people, especially if they have that hot emotion or that strong emotion with it, because it's energy. We just gotta turn it in.
And having made that transition, being more aware, less reactive, letting people do them, and just being uh, authentic with who you are, what does that allow you to feel more of?
Uh, Peace, I think, is the big one. It's just like I don't really bring my work home with me, unless I want to talk to somebody, and it just it makes it a more like a more real relationship. And it's interesting because when I was in the past, when I was sick, I was in the hospital for a while, and I was doing some work, and I kind of like looked through like my entire life, like everything I could remember, consciously from the first minute, that I started to realize it. And I did that all throughout my life, and I tried to think about where I was the happiest and where I felt like, the most confident in all these things about who I wanted to be. And it was always about where I was able to turn every interaction I have into, potentially like a relationship, not a one off or a transactional type of thing. And I lost that for a while. And recognizing that, that's who I am. I'm very social, networking, connect. I love to connect, it's part of what I like to do. And so, you know, we all go through phases, and probably I I had this reckoning with that in probably 2021 and 22. It was just part of where I had evolved to. But little things creep in, or you peel back layers, and there's another part of the onion you got to look into. And it's really helped, I think, with that part of it, just to recognize how to do that, how to be that person more of the time.
So you're able to do your work more peacefully. How does it affect your productivity?
Um, you know, it almost is like I don't care, and it's when you don't care, it's so much better. Like I don't waste time on things that, I know aren't going anywhere. I don't waste a lot of energy on stuff. So it's been great. I mean, I'm I'm as happy as I've been, and I think the type of things that I'm doing at my work right now, the things I'm trying to bring together are, I feel like I'm doing it in a much more whole and complete way than I've done it in the past.
Beautiful.
That broader picture.
What would you say to somebody? Because a lot of people, they're like, "Oh, hypnosis is scary," somebody getting control of your mind. What would you say to them?
You do it to yourself all the time, or the TV does it to you, or Facebook does it to you, and those do suck. So might as well do it in a way that's intentional, loving, and conscious. I think that's the biggest thing. There's nothing scary about it at all. We live some of our lives in that state many times, not by our own choosing, and that's when you're really manipulated into doing things you don't want to do.
I like to say you're getting more clarity and more awareness of navigating your nervous system, not less. Is that
Yeah, you're
that?
yeah, you're not reinforcing stuff you don't want. I mean, think about like people's obsession with social media and where it's led to in the society. Nobody has a consistent set of facts, and nobody trusts anybody anymore. And there's, billion, trillion dollars worth of brilliant scientists and algorithms and math programs to continue to keep you that way, because you'll scroll forever if you feel that way. So you're being hypnotized. And
Actually, there's this wonderful, I don't remember who did the study, but the human brain, you know how they used to have the rats and the rats would press the lever to get cocaine and
yeah, yeah.
they would press the lever, press the lever. Well, I believe for humans, it's something like anger, disgust, frustration that is the cocaine that keeps
Okay.
pressing the button. And you're right. The people that create those algorithms absolutely know all that stuff.
Yeah, it's there's a book, Johann Hari. It's like the Stolen Focus, I think it's called,
Mm.
um, where he talks about that. And he actually interviews like sort of the whistleblowers at Facebook, Google, and all that stuff. And there was one about a lot of people think that like, your phone's listening to you because if you say you need a briefcase, you'll get ads for briefcases. And he brought that point up, but one of the things he said that the Google guy told him was they don't need to hear you. They already know. Like they have like literally like a little voodoo doll of you and they know everything about you and they know when to prompt you with every single thing. So they don't have to listen. It's just
Yeah, that's the great unknown that we're heading into.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Um,
so we're talking before we started recording about your latest challenge that you're in the midst of flourishing through. Do you want to share what you got out of using the mind to heal through that?
Yeah, yeah. So I'll give a little background. So I was climbing and I injured my right ankle pretty severely, compound fracture, helicopter ride, all that stuff off the mountain. So it was pretty bad. Um, and basically not supposed to, no pressure on it for 8 weeks and stuff like that. So and I had major surgery, so big scars on both sides. And we talked about it, and I wanted to find a way to, essentially heal that in the way I like to do things. Like I don't want, I don't want to come back as somebody who looks like they have a broken ankle. I want to come back as somebody who's as active and as vital and everything that I wanted to be. That was my conscious intention. And so we worked on that through a, a session. And, you gave me, my 10-minute recording after the fact. And every single time I listen to it, even to this day, I listen to it, for 30 or 40 days straight. And then, every now and then, a couple nights a week or a couple mornings a week. And every single time when you talk about that part of my body, like you mentioned that, you're going to mirror one side to the other and you go into the detail about, every body part, your ligaments, your stem cells, all these things, like my entire leg, like it literally feels like an electric shock is running through it. And a couple of times I've tried to like, analyze it, like, am I doing something like physically as a reaction? And, you know, I really aren't, I'm not doing, like I'm not flexing that muscle or anything like that. It's just literally happening as I'm doing it. And it is, it starts out as kind of like a, you know, a, I don't know, maybe a slightly unsettling feeling because I don't, at first, like I didn't know it was going to happen, but the more I get into it, it feels like, this feeling that everything is going to be okay. You're whole and it's all coming back. And, I've had just such good results. Like, I had a really big scar. The doctor was very worried about whether or not it would actually, like the skin would actually come back together. That's one of the things you talk about, like your skin will look like your other foot's skin and it will mirror. And, it's basically, we're 3 months out and it's, basically everything is healed, as far as that. So, and I'm walking around and doing everything I need to do. So it's been great. And it, you know, anytime like I want to go back and understand that recording's always there. And I'm able to just really kind of get back in that moment again. If I had like a really strenuous day or something and I go to bed and my foot's sore because it does get a little bit sore, at times. And I just go through that. Like I wake up the next morning and it's just a different experience. It's like it's forgiven itself for being upset. That's the easiest
Beautiful.
way to
Love it.
describe it.
And for the listeners that aren't familiar with what David's talking about, at the end of the session, I create a customized audio so that they can get from where they are to where they want to go. And you listen to that as you drift off to sleep when the mind is very suggestible. Some people listen to it more than that. But that's what David's referring to. Well, David, if the whole world had a megaphone and was listening, what would you like to say to them?
Yeah, it's we all have these things that happen to us in life and they do imprint on you, good and bad and indifferent. And there's so much value for you in your life when you're able to get beyond those things. It's like, I think of it like, a marathon. Like a marathon, there's parts of a marathon that feel great, usually the first mile. There's parts of it that suck, but at the end of it, you finish it, you complete it, you feel amazing because you're changed, you're different, you've accomplished something. And that's, the way I feel about being able to, you know, go into these things that, again, I have, everybody has, because it allows you to recognize that, like, whatever crap you gave yourself for doing something wrong or whatever you did, it has a place, but it isn't what defines you. And that's not what you want to do. And it certainly doesn't help you to keep doing that to yourself. So when you understand it and when you know that it's something that's almost a program, you describe it as an Apple Force, Apple, whatever software on an i4, on a four,
And
iPhone 4.
most people are like an iPhone 16 operating on iPhone 4 technology.
Yeah. And it's like, it is that level of upgrade, although I've had some bad Apple upgrades, but it is a good upgrade to where your whole life changes, like your whole perspective on it changes. And it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how long ago it happened. It doesn't matter what happened. All of these things you're able, and I think personally, that's what we're supposed to do, is find a way to overcome those and get to the other side. And this is just an amazing way to do it.
David, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure having you here today.
Well, thank you.
Folks, thanks for joining us. If you got value of this, share it with other people that can benefit. Click like, click subscribe, and we'll see you on the next episode of Next Level Healing. This podcast is intended for the purpose of providing information and education. It does not provide advice and is not meant to be used for any self-diagnosis or the replacement of any kind of licensed professional. The creators and individuals appearing here do not endorse any specific tests, positions, medications, products, or procedures. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.